Only dust, said Uncle Andrew. Fine, dry dust. Nothing much to look at, not much to show for a lifetime of toil, you might say, but when I looked at that dust, I took jolly care not to touch it, and I thought that every grain had once been in another world. I don't mean another planet, you know. They're part of our world. You could get to them if you went far enough. But a really other world, another nature, another universe, somewhere you would never reach, even if you travel through the space of this universe forever and ever. A world that could only be reached by magic. Well, here Uncle Andrew rubbed his hands till his knuckles crackled like fireworks. I knew, he went on, that if only you could get it into the right form, the dust would draw you back to the place it had come from. But the difficulty was to get it into the right form. My earlier experiments were all failures. I tried them on guinea pigs. Some of them only died. Some exploded like little bombs. It was a jolly cruel thing to do, said Diggory, who'd once had a guinea pig of his own. How you do keep getting off the point, said Uncle Andrew. That's what the creatures were there for. I bought them myself. Let me see, where was I? Ah, yes. At last I succeeded in making the rings, the yellow rings. But now a new difficulty arose. I was pretty sure now that a yellow ring would send any creature that touched it into the other place. But what would be the good of that if I couldn't get them back to tell me what they'd found there? And what about them? Said Diggory. A nice mess they'll be in if they couldn't get back. You will keep on looking at everything from the wrong point of view, said Uncle Andrew, with a look of impatience. Can't you understand that the thing is a great experiment? The whole point of sending anyone into the other place is that I want to find out what it's like. Well, why didn't you go yourself then? Diggory had hardly ever seen anyone so surprised and offended as his uncle did at this simple suggestion. Me, he exclaimed. The boy must be mad. A man at my time of life and in my state of health, to risk the shock and the dangers of being flung suddenly into a different universe. I never heard of anything so preposterous in all my life. Do you realise what you're saying? Think what another world means. You might meet anything. And I suppose you've sent Polly into it then, said Diggory. His cheeks were flaming with anger now. And all I can say, he added, even if you are my uncle, is that you have behaved like a coward, sending a girl to a place that you're afraid to go to yourself. Silence, sir, said Uncle Andrew, bringing his hand down on the table. I will not be talked to like that by a little dirty schoolboy. You don't understand. I am the great scholar, the magician, the adept, who is doing the experiment. Of course I need subjects to do it on. Bless my soul, you'll be telling me next I ought to have asked the guinea pigs' permission before I used them. No great wisdom can be reached without sacrifice. But the idea of my going is ridiculous. It's like asking a general to fight as a common soldier. Supposing I got killed, what would become of my life's work? Oh, do stop jawing, said Diggory. How are you going to bring Polly back? I was going to tell you when you so rudely interrupted me, said Uncle Andrew, that I did at last find out a way of doing the return journey. The green rings draw you back. But Polly hasn't got a green ring. No, said Uncle Andrew with a cruel smile. Then she can't get back, shouted Diggory, and it's exactly the same as if you had murdered her. She can get back, said Uncle Andrew, if someone else will go after her, wearing a yellow ring himself and taking 2 green rings, one to bring himself back and one to bring her back. And of course Diggory saw the trap in which he was caught, and he stared at Uncle Andrew, saying nothing, with his mouth wide open. His cheeks had gone very pale. I hope, said Uncle Andrew presently in a high and mighty voice, just as if he were a perfect uncle who'd given one a handsome tip and some good advice. I hope, Diggory, you're not going to show the white feather. I should be very sorry to think that anyone in our family had not enough honour and chivalry to go to the aid of a lady in distress? Oh, shut up, said Diggory. If you had any honour and all that, you'd be going yourself. But I know you won't. All right, I see I've got to go, but you are a beast. I suppose you planned the whole thing so she would go without knowing it, and I would have to go after her. Of course, said Uncle Andrew with his hateful smile. Very well, I'll go. But there's one thing I jolly well mean to say first. I didn't believe in magic till today. I see now it's real. Well, if it is, I suppose all the old fairy tales are more or less true, and you're simply a wicked, cruel magician like the ones in the stories. Well, I've never read a story in which people of that sort weren't paid out in the end, and I bet you will be, and serve you right. Of all the things Diggory had said, this was the first that really went home. Uncle Andrew started, and there came over a look over his face of such horror that, beast though he was, you could almost feel sorry for him. But a second later he smoothed it away and said with a rather forced laugh, well, I suppose that's the natural thing for a child to think, brought up among women as you have been. Old wives' tales. I don't think you need worry about my danger, Diggory. Wouldn't it be better to worry about the danger of your little friend? She's been gone some time. If there are any dangers over there, well, it'll be a pity to arrive a moment too late. A lot you care, said Diggory fiercely, but I'm sick of all this jaw. What have I got to do? You really must learn to control that temper of yours, my boy, said Uncle Andrew coolly. Otherwise you'll grow up like your Aunt Letty. Now, attend to me. He got up, put on a pair of gloves and walked over to the tray that contained the rings. They only work, he said, if they're actually touching your skin. Wearing gloves, I can pick them up like this and nothing happens. If you carried one in your pocket, nothing would happen. But of course you'd have to be careful not to put your hand in your pocket and touch it by accident. The moment you touch a yellow ring, you vanish out of this world. When you're in the other place, I expect, of course this hasn't been tested yet, but I expect the moment you touch a green ring, you vanish out of that world and, I expect, reappear in this. Now, I take these 2 greens and drop them into your right hand pocket. Remember very carefully which pocket the greens are in. G for green and R for right. G-R, you see, which are the first 2 letters of green. One for you and one for the little girl. And now you pick up a yellow one for yourself. I should put it on your finger if I were you. There'll be less chance of dropping it. Diggory had almost picked up the yellow ring when he suddenly checked himself. Look here, he said. What about Mother? Suppose she asks where I am? The sooner you go, the sooner you're back, said Uncle Andrew cheerfully. But you don't really know whether I can get back. Uncle Andrew shrugged his shoulders, walked across to the door, unlocked it, threw it open and said, oh, very well then, just as you please. Go down and have your dinner. Leave the little girl to be eaten by wild animals or drowned or starved in Otherworld or lost there for good if that's what you prefer. It's all one to me. Perhaps before tea time you'd better drop in on Mrs. Plummer and explain that she'll never see her daughter again because you were afraid to put on a ring. By gum, said Greg Diggory, don't I just wish I was big enough to punch your head. Then he buttoned up his coat, took a deep breath and picked up the ring. And he thought then, as he's always thought afterwards too, that he couldn't decently have done anything else.